Welcome to Patty's Aquatics. So today what I want to do is talk about the resurrection jar, but more specifically I want to go in depth of how to collect one using the experiences I've had collecting them and all the research I've done. So stay tuned. So if you're not familiar with what a resurrection jar exactly is, I will explain it over the process of this entire video. But I do have two previous videos about it, which I will link up here. But a quick overview, basically a resurrection jar is the starting point, the first phase of starting a food web within your aquarium. So you want to start a resurrection jar, but what kind of container do you use? My personal preference is to use an actual jar, just because you can see through it, because later when you bring that home, you're going to want to observe it and watch everything that's inside of it. Now, that being said, you can use any type of container you would like. But like I said, my personal preference and what I would recommend is an actual jar, just because it's going to make it easier for yourself later down the road. But now that you have this container, now what's next? Now you want to go to your local waterway. So where do you go to collect this resurrection jar? Well, you can collect it from any local waterway. Any lakes, rivers, or ponds, they're all going to hold the life that you're looking for. Now, if you have concerns about pollution, this is where you just kind of take a walk around and you enjoy nature. You look at the water, you look at the shoreline, look at the surrounding areas. Look for dead fish possibly laying all over the shore or within the water itself. Look for any heavy amounts of garbage or trash that's laying in the water. Just use your brain and kind of observe the area and decide if it's safe or not to take a sample from. And if you feel comfortable, now it's time to take a sample for that resurrection jar and the fun begins. So you're ready to fill that jar. So you go down to that waterway and stick your arm in the water down to the bottom and you grab a handful. Handful of what exactly is what I like to go over now. What you don't want to grab is just dirt, sediment, or sand. Now, will you find microorganisms and microfauna within that handful of just dirt? Absolutely, yes, you would. But the whole purpose of this resurrection jar is to be able to pour it into your aquarium to start that food web. And organic material is essential in that for those microorganisms to not only hold on to, but to feed off of. Now, if you don't have that, one, you don't want to pour just dirt or sand in your aquarium. I know at least I don't. And then two, if you just have like a dirt or sediment within that jar, there is a chance that you could overpower that jar and basically wipe out your culture. So you want organic material. So what type of organic material am I talking about then? What you want is a leaf litter, a dead, decomposing leaves and twigs. Deader the better. But that's what you want. It's almost mulchy material. You want the stuff that's sitting on top of that dirt, sand, or sediment. That's what you're looking for, and that's what you're looking to take a handful of to stick into your jar. So how much of this leaf litter organic material do I put in my jar? Well, it really depends on the size of the jar, how many aquariums you plan on feeding this to. So for me, I've had my best luck by just putting about a quarter to a third of that jar full of that leaf litter or organic material. Because then next, what you want to do is you take that jar and you dip it in that body of water and you fill it up the rest of the way with that water. But here's what my recommendation would be. I would say take an extra container. Make sure that you have more than one jar. If you're only feeding one tank, still fill 2 jars. Always bring one extra. I'll explain why later, but I think it's a very cool and key part for the food web process later. Now that your jars are full, it's time to get ready to go back to your fish room. And I'll go over the process more of what we do to get them ready to be able to watch and observe them so we can put them in our tanks and start that food web. Now that you're home, the first thing you want to do is take that cover off the container if you have one. You want to be able to have oxygen to be able to pass in and out through that. Now, what I do is I put a piece of paper towel on top with a rubber band over it to kind of keep it secure so oxygen can still pass in and through. But you can use, like maybe a coffee filter or a pantyhose, something that's going to be able to have oxygen, like I said, be able to pass in and out through it. Now, you don't need to cover it at all. You don't have to. I personally like to, more because if there's anything within there that could metamorphosize into some type of flying bug, it's going to save my sanity with my wife with seeing things flying around. So I find that to be beneficial on my part for that. Now, once you got that ready, now the next thing what you want to do You can put it in a windowsill if you'd like. I know a lot of people do that, but you just got to be cautious. Don't put it somewhere that's going to get a lot of direct sunlight, because you don't want to cook all the inhabitants who's inside of there. What I do though is I put it on my desk down in my fish room, and I have a actual aquarium light that's right near there that gives it light. I can even put it right on top of the jars if I'd like. So that's what I do. So you want to find an area to put this jar where you're going to be able to watch and observe it. It's going to be able to get oxygen to be able to pass in and out through it. And it's going to get some light, not only for those inhabitants, but for you to be able to watch and observe them. Now, not only do you observe the jar, you want to keep an eye on the conditions of this jar during the 30 days. If you have like a foul smell coming from it at any point during it, or maybe you have like a oily or slimy buildup at the surface of the water of the jar, things you can do to solve that is you can drop an airline within the jar. Now, I've never done it, but I have seen people do it and are successful with it. You also could put some type of floating plant at the top of it, like a red root floater or something along those lines. That'll all kind of help with that process and maybe take that odor away, or maybe help with that surface of water if you're having issues with it. Now, that being said, the best part of observing this jar is the life. So that observing part, that is my favorite part, because for the next 30 days, I get to sit there and watch everything come to life, swim around, scurry at the bottom. What I highly recommend is take out your phone or take out a camera and just zoom in and watch the stuff. You can see so many more things that you could with your own naked eye. And, take away the whole food web aspect of this entire thing. This part alone of just observing the things that come alive from that little handful of gunk that you grab at the bottom of that body of water, I find truly amazing. So why are we watching this for 30 days now? Well, we're doing it for a few reasons. One, we absolutely want to see everything that's coming alive in that jar, because we're going to be pouring into our aquarium, correct? But also, we want to make sure there's nothing in there that we don't want to put in our aquarium. Now, there's a few things you don't want in there. I know number one is always that dragonfly nymph. Now, I know there's a few others, but this is where I highly, highly recommend you go check out the Father Fish Discord channel. Within this Discord, there is different things in there, but more importantly, there's so much information about everything regarding not only the Father Fish method of stuff, but also this resurrection jar, and there's identification guides in there of things you don't want in there. But there is also identification guides of the things that are within your aquarium, in your jar, that you can identify to know what they are exactly. And I find this tool to be highly, highly beneficial and useful. So that's what we do for the next 30 days. We sit back, we watch, we observe, we look at everything that's swimming around within these jars. Then after that 30 days, it's time to pour it in our aquarium. So you've watched and observed these jars for the last 30 days, just teeming with life. Well, it's time to add them to your aquarium. So it's as easy as that. Just pour them in your aquarium. All those microorganisms and microfauna will go down into your tank with that leaf litter and that organic material for things for them to be able to feed off of. And that's where we get into the food web. And it starts with this resurrection jar. Like I said, this is the starting point. This is step one. By pouring that into your aquarium, you're releasing all that microfauna and microorganisms within your aquarium. Now, added with that leaf litter and that organic material, that is a food source for them. But it's not their only food source. They will eat the waste within your aquarium. They will break it down. They'll break it down so fine it becomes food for your plants. And that's where this food web starts. Then from there, your fish can feed off those microorganisms and microfauna. Then, like I said, those microfauna go back to eating that waste at the bottom of your aquarium. It becomes one cycle, one circle of life, constantly feeding each other, which is the food web. Now, in order to keep this web and circle going, you need to supplement your tank by adding dry leaves into your tank occasionally to feed those microorganisms. Now, that's where, when we are back down at that local waterway, I highly recommend maybe grabbing a handful of dry dead leaves as well to be able to supplement down the road. And that's where that extra resurrection jar comes into hand that I talked about earlier in this video. Now, I actually got this idea from someone on the Father Fish Discord, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Grab an extra jar and watch it for that 30 days, but don't pour that one into your aquarium. And why is that? You can stick those dry leaves into that water. It's a safe jar where you know there's nothing bad in it. You stick those dry leaves in there to let them saturate and soak so they sink to the bottom of your aquarium. But not only that, you're going to have more microorganisms and microfauna attached to that leaf when you throw it into your aquarium. So I found that to be a brilliant idea, and I highly recommend you try. Now, a few other tips. If you want, try adding that resurrection jar in during the night when the lights are off, especially if you have like a tank full of livebearers, like I know I have in a lot of my tanks. It might give them a more of a fighting chance to be able to survive and flourish when the lights are off, when the fish don't see them as well. Also, you don't have to add the entire jar into an aquarium if you don't want to. Like, say you didn't collect this extra resurrection jar and you only have one jar for one tank. Maybe you can put half that leaf litter in there to start that food web process, and then use that jar yet with that extra litter to be able to put your dry leaves into, and then to put into your tank. Just a few other tips to kind of think about. So you've successfully added that resurrection jar to your aquarium, and you have started the process of the food web. So what's next? Well, you get to sit back, watch and observe and enjoy your tank, but just keep an eye on that organic material and that leaf litter within your aquarium. You want to watch those leaves more specifically. Once they start to skeletonize and things start to disappear in there, you know that those organisms are eating and feeding on that, and it's almost time to add more. So it's a good idea, like I said, to have a little container of old, dead, dry leaves that you collected when you collect those resurrection jars on hand. So you can put them in that spare resurrection jar to be able to start to soak and saturate. So by the time you need to add more, they're ready and you can put some in. So I hope you found this video useful and maybe found some information in it that might have helped. What I would like to do is highly recommend you check out the Father Fish YouTube channel if you haven't already. If you're watching this, I'm sure you have. But we all know there's a plethora of good information within that YouTube channel that he shares. Secondly, that Discord channel. I know I've said this numerous times in past videos, but I can't stress enough just how much good and beneficial information there is within this Discord channel if you're keeping this style of tank, and I highly, highly recommend you check it out. That being said, if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button. But if you do, make sure you hit that notification bell because you don't want to miss any of my upcoming projects. Then, as always, remember to think outside that box and take a step back into nature. I hope to see you next time here at Patty's Aquatics.